Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Dan Clouser. He is an author, blogger, podcast host, speaker, and a consultant. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely, Dan. I've also been looking for this conversation, as I said, and it's nice. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, and I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people would benefit and understand about life, about everything else from this conversation. We'll be talking about a road, a mission, and miles to go with you. So my first question is, Dan, and through that you will be able to help the audience understand is that you are doing a lot of traveling on a mission, telling stories. What is it that you seek through this mission, your journey on this, endless road, and and exactly what are you trying to do with those stories? I want your story through you. I am not the right person to tell it for you.
I just think, the stories I'm telling, I think I want to give people hope. You know, we live in such a polarized climate nowadays, especially over here in the United States, but I think it really is a worldwide polarization. And I think, my mission is to make people understand that if you actually sit down and have conversations with people who don't necessarily look like you, don't necessarily think like you, you're going to actually find out that you have a lot more in common with them than your differences are. And I think that's really what I'm trying to do is give people hope and make them understand that there really is a lot of good in this world if you seek it out.
Right, Ed. Right. What about your story? What happens to your story? Yeah, is other story your story, or you are looking at your story in a different manner? Don't you sometimes have this question? That the step that you have taken, that you sold everything, and you are now traveling in a RV. Tell us a bit about that. Was it necessary? Was it the only way to do so? You are giving a lot of impact on society positively, but don't you sometimes think, or your wife must sometimes can tell you, why this road, why not any other road, when there were great roads, all such nice roads where there was more comfort into them.
Yeah, I think I tell a lot of people, I think, part of it was just in my blood. My mother, back in the 1980s, she did a very similar thing, where she took an old 1967 Plymouth Valiant, took the back seat out of it, put a sheet of plywood in there and a mattress, and kind of turned it into a quasi RV. And she traveled all throughout the country, did a lot of volunteer work, met a lot of people, just really had great stories of those people. And as much as I respected her and loved, telling people what she did after she had passed away, I never did envision that I would go down that same route. And then in 2019, I happened to take two separate solo road trips. One was to Dallas, Texas, and I went back originally from Pennsylvania here in the U.S. So I went from Pennsylvania to Dallas, Texas, and then went home through Lake Charles, Louisiana. And a few months later, I did the same thing, took a trip to Orlando, Florida, and back. And those two trips, I kind of had a little bit of an aha moment where it kind of hit me where it's like, wow, I think I really understand now why Mom did what she did. Because there was such an incredible peace and serenity on those road trips. It was one of the first times in my life where I ever really took my time and enjoyed the journey. I ran a youth nonprofit sports organization for 30 years. Loved everything that I did throughout that time. We did a lot of travel, but it was always very regimented. We always had to be at a certain place at a certain time. We had a specific amount of time that we could spend there, and then we were, back on the bus to the next destination or whatever the case was. So there was never a whole lot of time to actually enjoy the journey. Where those 2 road trips, I really took my time and enjoyed the journey. And then when I got back, I was in the process of adding 10 chapters to the first book that I'd published, and I ended up writing like I hadn't written before. Probably knocked out like 4 or 5 chapters within a couple days, and that's when I started, kind of feeling this higher calling and hearing this voice that it was time to close the chapter of my life that I was in, and open a new one. And initially I did not accept it. I loved what I did, working with kids and being a positive impact on their lives. And if you would have talked to me in 2018, I would have told you that I would die, probably in the sports complex that we were running at that particular moment in time. So to really kind of heed that calling, and do something and leave your comfort zone, it was difficult for me. And then finally, when I kind of bought into the concept that, it was time to travel and use my writing more and use my words more, I ran it by my wife. And again, she thought I'd completely lost my mind. And, she was, very similar to me, where she was like, this was your mom's story. It's not going to be our story. It was her story. But then there were some things happening in the background in her career and her life as well. That after, a few months, she bought into it, and she was like, yeah, you know what? I think it is time for a new chapter. So we set out on this journey, put our house on the market, bought an RV. During all that time, COVID came upon us, which again kind of derailed our plans for a little bit, or delayed them. But yet there was still this certain amount of peace throughout that whole process that we were doing the right thing, even with the uncertainty. Having an RV payment, having a mortgage payment at the same time wasn't part of our initial plan. But there was, again, this incredible sense of peace that we were still going down that right path. So we embarked on this journey in August of 2020. It's been a little over 3 years since we've been doing it. And, I love telling the stories of the people that we meet on our journey. And I think every one of those stories impacts my story, because I think every person we meet in life has some sort of impact on you, even if it's just a short interaction, or a long, several year long relationship. All of those really become the threads of, the quilt that is our life.
Right, Dan. Right. So if anyone asks you, Dan, where are you going? Where are you going in life? How would you answer that? Someone not unknown, someone who does not know you, and in a philosophical way also, in a much more practical way also. How would you answer that?
Um, I think,
Yeah, there was some static. If you can, yeah, not audios are not getting you. No, maybe, yeah. Now it is, but I'm not able to hear you.
how about now?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I had good connectivity, but sometimes with this
Yeah,
long
but your
distance thing,
audio is quite low on the lower side, volume wise.
okay. Um, Let me just adjust my mic a little.
No problem.
Is that any better?
Yes, yes, very good
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So to answer your question, and sorry for everybody out there for the technical difficulties, that's some of the things we deal with. Um, I think where I'm going in life is to really create a better understanding that the journey of life is as much of the destination as quote unquote the destination itself is, and really, you know, taking my time to enjoy the littler things in life, and you know, focusing on those moments that are totally fleeting. You know, that, you know, appreciating a sunrise and a sunset so much more than what I did when I was younger. You know, appreciating you know, a walk with my dog, or, you know, a walk on the beach with my wife or something like that. I think that's really, you know, I think we get so caught up in our lives in the hustle and bustle that, you know, sooner or later we look back and we look at all the little things that we didn't appreciate at the time. And I'm really learning to live in the moment a lot more, and appreciate those little things while they're happening, as opposed to having them rush by and then look back and say, wow, I wish I would have been a little bit more present in that moment.
Right, Dan. Right. How do you plan your day when you are on the road, for a thing like this? How does it work for you? It might sometimes, is it easy? Is it difficult? How do you live your life as well as then get into other stories and then get back into your own life and tell it to the world? Because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, lots of energy, and at the same time you have you have to also keep your eye further up onto the road, because you have more distance to travel, more to accomplish your mission.
Yeah. So I will. There's times where we may only be planned out, you know, 2 or 3 weeks in advance. Right now, we're in somewhat of a unique situation where we really pretty much know where we're going to be. You know, for the most part, it's not all nailed down specifically up until probably about this time next year, because we're doing a trip to Alaska next year with a group of friends. And I've got some book signing tours that we're putting together in Louisiana and Texas after the first of the year. And I'm doing some book events. We're currently down in the state of Florida. So I'm doing some book events over the next couple of weeks, up until the end of the year. But there are times where we're only a few weeks out in advance.
Yeah, again, a bit of audio trouble, Dan. No, no. Yeah. Maybe if this settles, then we can hear you. No, just a bit of again. Maybe you did that thing good last time. Yeah.
Is that any better?
Yes. Yes. Back.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
So on days we're traveling, like my podcast, I'll only open up my schedule on one day a week, and then make sure that we're actually in a campground on the day that I'll record. And I may record 2 or 3 episodes that day, just so that I know I'm in a spot that has good internet and good connection. I thought we were in a spot today where we had good connectivity, but it seems like we're having a little bit of issues, but not sure, you know, if that's just the distance that we're communicating here, or if it's something on my end. I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, that's kind of how we plan things out. But, you know, there's some times where we may just, you know, shift. Like the other day on our way down to Florida, we had about a 3-hour drive ahead of us, but we made sure that we stopped in an area, a nice park in Columbia, South Carolina, that we've stopped in several times, where we get our dog a nice walk along the river there, because we know he loves it, and it's a spot we've been to before. You know, so we ate lunch there. We took a walk. So we, you know, during a 3-hour drive, we probably had a 2.5 hour break. And then, you know, that's the beauty of not being on a super tight schedule. Now there are days where we're a little tighter, and we don't have as much flexibility, but we try to keep those days few and far between.
Right, right. What sort of stories do you select to tell? Then what is your selection process? And at the same time, you also talk about living with no regrets. Why do you talk about that? Is there something that you want to convey through that? And you also talk about living in the moment. I want to your message for the audience through this, that you are doing so much for everyone. You think that this is the way to serve God and giving back and helping others, telling their stories. How can others relate to this, learn from this? And in terms of, especially, a lot of people have many regrets in their life, either of they are not achieving what they wanted to achieve, or not being able to do things for others. How what would you like to tell through your story, through the stories that you tell?
So, the people that I have on my show and that I interview, I just feel as though everyone has a story, and I think all those stories can be very inspirational for people out there listening. So I have such a broad range of guests, from people who are other full-time RVers like us, to people who are former professional athletes and Olympic athletes, to people that I've met through Podmatch, the way we've connected. And I just think everyone has a very interesting story, and I think all those stories can be inspirational for people. And as far as the component of living with no regrets, that is truly something that I feel. Because there are a lot of people who they look back and they say, "Oh, I wish I would have done this differently. I wish I would have done this differently." But truly, even throughout the difficult times of my life and the hard times of my life, and life is filled with mountains and valleys. um, I don't regret any of the bad times. I don't regret any of the bad decisions I made. I don't regret any of the failures that I've had throughout my life, because I've learned from every single one of those. And it's made me who I am today. And I think when people start to regret things is when they don't learn from those mistakes and they don't learn from those failures. And I think, there's a lesson to be learned in everything that we do. And, there's so many lessons in the valleys of life, more lessons in the valleys of life than there are in the mountaintops of life. And I think that's how you truly live with no regrets, is just simply learn from every mistake you've made, and try not to repeat those mistakes. I think that's the key. So I think that's when I talk about living with no regrets, I certainly haven't had a perfect life by any stretch, but I don't have any regrets on anything that's happened to me throughout my life, because I've learned from everything. And like I said, it's made me resilient. It's made me who I am today. And like I said, it truly is, I can say that I have no regrets throughout my life with everything that's happened to it. And as far as that living in the moment, again, I think that's so important, because we can get so caught up, and just so much about looking into the future, and not understanding that we're not guaranteed tomorrow. We have no idea what tomorrow holds. So I think, cherishing every moment that you have with people. Throughout our journey, we've been able to connect with family that we haven't connected with in so many years, and friends, and we really do cherish those moments, because you don't know, when you pull out of that driveway, that could very well be the last time that we see them. You just don't know. So I think that's why living in the moment has become so important to us.
Right, Dan, right. If your mother were to see you living the life that you are living at the moment, you know, what do you think she would have told you or thought about it?
Um, I think she would probably say, "I'm glad you finally figured it out," you know, because, I think, like I said, I respected what she did and how she lived her life, and I had a lot of admiration for the way she did things. But again, I never really pictured myself at that time that I would be following, so closely in her footsteps. So I think that would be her words to me, is that, she's glad I finally figured it out. Because I mean, there are times, I wrote about this in my one book, when I was younger, she would get me up early in the morning to go watch the sunrise on the beach, and I wanted no parts of it. I wanted to sleep in. I'm a, early teens, and the last thing I want to do is go watch the sunrise on the beach with my mother. Where now, any chance I can get to see a sunrise on the beach, we'll jump on it. So I think, just again, my mom was very good about enjoying those little things in life. So I think she would be proud that I've figured that one out.
Right. Were you a mama's boy, or much more independent minded?
I mean, I was the baby of our family, so I think I was probably always a bit of a mama's boy. Although I know in my, early teen years and preteen years, I know I frustrated my mom, quite a bit, and she had to exercise tough love on me, in quite a few instances. Um, so yeah, I was definitely a mama's boy, but definitely did my share of frustrating my mother when I was younger, for sure. As I'm sure we probably all did.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dan. And that is where, the journey of my mother's son. It's the name of your podcast. I liked it before even, we fixed this interview. I used to see this name. I liked the name, and I used to wonder, this is something very good. Though I could not, I did not think of venturing in, but I knew it's an intelligent name, and there is a story behind it. How did you come across this name? You could have gone for any other name. It needs a lot of heart. It needs a lot of mind to come to this such a wonderful name.
Yeah, I remember a text conversation I was having with my one uncle a few years ago, before we had sold everything, and I don't remember any more specifically what we were talking about, but I do remember texting him something about, I guess I am my mother's son. And his response was, well, that's not a bad thing at all. And it just kind of spurred from that conversation, as, we were, getting ready to start this journey, and thinking of what the title of the new podcast would be. And it just kind of landed on that. That's it. This is, we're starting this journey, and it is the journey of my mother's son, and a way to keep her legacy alive and kind of follow in her footsteps. So, yeah, I can't say there's a whole, ton of like marketing research or anything like that. It just kind of came about, and it's a great conversation starter. We've got our website on the back of our RV. So many times we might, be in a campground, and somebody be like, well, tell me, what is this? The journey of my mother's son. Tell me about that. So it definitely sparks conversations. And, I love being able to, tell people about, what my mom did while she was here on Earth.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful name. And as you talked about marketing, none of the marketing campaigns would express such a thing. You know, it can only be by your own thoughts, and it's a great thing that you came up with this name. I want to understand for the audience, how many stories do you want to tell? Because you are in this whole mission of telling stories, sharing people's stories with the world.
I mean, I want to tell as many as I can. I mean, I think our podcast now is somewhere around 260 episodes. I'm in a mode right now where I'm putting out 2 episodes a week, but part of those are just stories of my wife and I, once a week, just kind of recapping our travels. And then the next episode would be with a guest. So, I want to tell as many stories as I can. And as long as there's new people that we meet, and, people who have interesting stories out there that I think can inspire other people. And I'm going to keep telling them, because I love getting feedback. I was doing a book signing in Aurora, Colorado, and one of my listeners came up and told me that, she'd been listening to my podcast for several years, and she saw I was signing there and wanted to introduce herself, and stuff like that just validates what we're doing. I mean, because what it's like as a host. You put this stuff out there for the world, and there's sometimes there's a little bit of self-doubt. It's like, am I reaching anybody? Is anybody listening? Am I inspiring anybody? And then you get that one email or that one comment on social media, and you're like, okay, yeah, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And that's to shift a little bit on that same token, though. And one of the beautiful things about what we do with our travels is I get to connect with a lot of my old players that I'd coached back when I ran the organization, and seeing these, young men and young women who are now adults, some of them have their own families, and hearing them tell you the impact that they had on that you had on their life as they were growing up, again, just validated what I did, as a youth sports coach and administrator for 30 years of my life. So, I mean, we're all human, so we like to hear that positive feedback. It's not feeding ego or anything like that. It's just that validation that we did something right.
Absolutely. This world is a happy place, a not so happy place. When you see a bit of more world, you see suffering, you see problems people are dealing with, you see things firsthand on the ground, and you see happiness also. How do you feel during those moments? How do you keep yourself motivated? Many a times when you see suffering, you just want to run away from all those things and be in a very safe bubble sort of a thing. For it is a great, actually, uh, achievement if you are able to do that. What is your understanding on learning by being on the road? Have you seen more suffering, more happiness? I want to understand through your through your travel.
We've definitely seen more happiness, and I think part of that is just creating it. I think you're always going to find what you're ultimately looking for. So if you're looking for pain and suffering, you're going to find that a lot more. If you're looking for happiness and joy, you're going to find that a lot more. And it doesn't mean that when you're looking for happiness and joy that there isn't pain and suffering. It's still there. You can't ignore it. I'm very empathetic to that. And it does bother me at times, but then my hope is restored when I go back and see that joy and happiness in others as well. So it's a constant balance, but I think when you're always going to find what you're ultimately looking for. So, if you're wondering why you're not seeing enough, joy and happiness, seek more of it, and you'll find it.
Absolutely, absolutely. You quote Michael Franti, his opening words of his song Gloria. When many people, little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes. Help us understand this, the hidden meaning behind this. Why do you quote this, and how are you living it? How others can live this? Because this is the time, in the time of humanity, that we need such lines much more than ever.
Yeah. Again, that song Gloria has just been one of my favorite songs, since I first heard it. And that opening line really, resonates with me and resonates with our journey because, like I just said, when you're seeking out joy and happiness, you're going to find it. And, when you're looking at all of the, many little people in the world who are out there, the spotlight's not on them. They're not getting headlines in the news, but they're all out there. They're doing all these many little things to make the world a little bit better place. And I think ultimately, love can always win over hate. I truly believe that. And I think that's one of the reasons why, I love that lyric so much. And that quote is that, if you look around, I remember we helped with some hurricane relief efforts in Louisiana our first year traveling after Hurricane Laura came through. And as heartbreaking as it was to see the destruction and pain that people were going through, there was also an incredible sense of hope as well, because you saw these people who themselves had just lost everything. We were there from out of town lending a hand and helping. And then there's people who lost everything who, number one, are incredibly grateful that you're there helping them, but then they're also helping too, even though they've lost as much as the person that they're helping. And I remember talking to a woman who came in from Houston to help as well, and having a conversation with her and asking, I asked her, I said, so what brought you here, to help after this hurricane? She said, well, I'm from Houston, and a few years ago, Hurricane Harvey completely devastated our area, and a lot of people from this area came and helped us. So I felt the least I could do is come back and give them a little bit of the same support that they gave us when we were in need. So again, when you see stuff like that, that is those many little people in many little places doing the many little things to make the world a better place. And so that's why that resonates with me, because we see it every day. We see people out there helping, and the RV community is such a giving community. Anytime somebody needs a helping hand, somebody's willing to give it. So that's why I love it. It's a great quote, and I'm able to see it in action firsthand.
Absolutely. There is much to learn from you, Dan, about you, about your life, about the stories you tell, about your podcast, where you get so many guests, so many stories you are able to tell about people. And so it is, how do people, get to learn from, what is the best way they can connect with your stories, and through your story, as well as other stories through you, to your podcast, and also about your 3 books. And I guess you are counting, there will be many more books.
Yeah, so the easiest way is to go to my website, which is journeyofmymotherson.com or danclouser.com. I understand that journeyofmymotherson.com can be quite a mouthful. So if it's too much to type that into the keyboard, you just type in danclouser.com. They'll get you to the same site, and there's links there to the podcast, to all my books, everything I do. If you're looking to book me for a speaking engagement, or if someone out there is listening is also another podcast host and wants me on the show, all my contact information is there as well. So anybody who wants to get a hold of me, the best way to track me down is to just go to my website, and everything you need to find out is right there.
Right, right. You quote Michael Franti long back. I read about Robert Frost. The woods are lovely, dark and deep. There are promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. How many miles do you want to go? What is it that you seek for yourself? How do you see your life when you see back? How do you see your life when you see towards the future? And will there be an end of the road, or will it be a road forever?
Right now we have no end game in sight. We're going to continue to do this as long as we're healthy, because again, we don't know what tomorrow might bring. So we're just, we're going to do it as long as we possibly can. As long as our health permits it. And as far as, down the road, I hope my life's impact, once I'm gone, I hope when people bring up my name, that it brings a smile to their face. That would be my greatest legacy.
Indeed, indeed, you are bringing many smiles on many people's faces. And I can tell you, you will continue to tell stories. I will continue to tell stories. But this story about your story, I will continue to remember for a long, long time.
Thank you.
With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.